Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you some uplifting stories in these trying times. Our first story today, for the first time ever, 30,000 pounds of leftover Super Bowl food saved from landfill and donated to charity. Rather than rotting in a landfill, more than 30,000 pounds of leftover Super Bowl food are being used to feed hungry Floridians. For the first time in Super Bowl history, all the uneaten food from last week's game at the Hard Rock Stadium has been donated to local homeless shelters. NFL Green organizers partnered with Centerplate and food recovery charity Food Rescue US in order to facilitate the massive volunteer mission throughout the week following Sunday's game. We know food insecurity impacts 1 in 7 people in the state of Florida, said Carol Shattuck, CEO of Food Rescue US. Through our work with Centerplate and NFL Green, we can make sure that excess food from Hard Rock Stadium and the Miami Beach Convention Center helps us feed individuals and families throughout Miami, while also not contributing to the growing food waste crisis in the U.S. The rescue food includes uneaten chicken wings, ribs, tenderloins, and charcuteries from concession stands and VIP booths. The food is expected to feed 20,000 people after all it's successfully distributed between Miami Rescue Mission, Broward Outreach Center, Broward Partnership for the Homeless, Lotus Health Shelter, and Camilla's House. Food Rescue US Miami Director Ellen Bowen told ESPN, "It's a full-time volunteer job for everyone. We really just want to help people in need. It's amazing to see how much food there is that would otherwise have been thrown in the trash and can now feed so many people." This was such a generous mission. We talked about this a few weeks back, about when this was first proposed as an idea. And I loved that instead of all of this food going to waste, as it often does at big games like this, instead it was being used for good and being used to feed hungry people in need. So this is great that it's continuing on this path. In other food news, over 2,000 tons of food is being sold when it wouldn't have otherwise, because other stores would deem it as past its prime. A Berlin supermarket is tackling the challenge of reducing food waste by reselling all of its unattractive products that other grocery stores refuse to carry. The surplus grocery store stocks its shelves with foodstuffs and produce that's expired, near to expire, misshapen, or just a bit odd. And it offers its shoppers up to 80% less than the regular supermarket prices, as it's getting it at a much reduced cost due to its imperfections. According to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, 1.3 billion tons of food are thrown out or wasted every year across the world. This amounts to 1/3 of all food produced worldwide. At the same time, as all trash landfills are filling up rapidly. It's a pretty direct correlation. 1/3 of food wasted. 1/3. And people are going hungry all over the world, and we are wasting 1/3 of food. Okay, so these guys are trying to come up with a solution to that. The majority of global waste comes from Europe and North America, with the average European wasting 210 and 254 pounds of food every year. Some of the food rejected by the other supermarkets, restaurants, and wholesalers, which surplus quality assurance specialist Timo Schmidt and his team inspect every day, is discarded because something as little as a cucumber has grown at a 90-degree angle, or a jar of jam that's mislabeled. Other items that are past their expiry date are carefully inspected to ensure that it is in fact safe to eat. We check smell, taste, consistency, and packaging. If in doubt, we call in a laboratory. As long as the food has been deemed safe to eat, the customer understands that the risks inherent in what they are purchasing, expired biscuits or castaway yogurt or meat, is legal to sell under German law, whereas might not be in certain parts of the United States. Suppliers such as farms, wholesalers, retailers have a strong economic incentive to partner with us, said the founder of Surplus. When buying and trading surplus via our marketplace, we're saving them a significant disposal cost while providing a new revenue source. France passed a law 4 years ago that supermarkets could not throw away food, and this is until it's reached its sell-by date. This means donating food to the banks, composting it, recycling it, used for pet food or biofuel. But all are required rather than discarding it. Felmer and Schott allow producers and distributors to save food storage while disposal costs selling and donating their food to surplus, which, if their own storage space can accommodate it, will be offered for free to NGOs. In 2019, Surplus saved 2,000 tons of food, and the company has big, bold plans for this year, 2020. It wants to continue opening stores in Berlin while expanding into other cities to launch their own product line with the Surplus label made specifically from food that's been rescued and created. An online platform that allows for grocery store delivery and distributes an increasingly large amount of food, donated food coming Surplus's way, which includes 1 million croissants last year. So if you're a croissant fan, that's the place to find them. They also have a subscription service called Redder Box, Rescue Box in English, containing a random assortment of quality control products that have been saved from the dumpster and delivered to your house on a monthly basis with free shipping throughout Germany. Where I'm from, we actually have a service like that as well. There's an app that you can get, and there's probably similar apps. Just do a little bit of research on your phone to find out what yours is. Mine is called Flash Food, and it shows you stuff that's near expiry, and you can order it to be put aside at your grocery store. And it's like a crazy reduced cost as well, and it's just maybe a couple of days out. So if you make like a soup or a chili or something and then freeze it, then it's all safe to eat in that. So it's definitely a good idea. Like, we don't want to be wasting 1/3 of our food anymore. We don't really have the resources to cover those things anymore. So we need to be doing something new about this. And I think Flash Food and other apps like this in the store in Germany is really helping us achieve these eco-friendly goals. So yeah, do what you can. Find your research. Find your local things to make this happen, because we got to save the environment. All right, it's done a lot for us. Let's do some more for it. When we come back, a heroic orangutan and other animal stories when we return from the break.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. When we left for our break, we were talking about a couple of different ways that we can preserve food, starting out with the Super Bowl and how they made sure that there was less food waste than usual, and a couple of other ways to do that. And now, this awe-inspiring moment that a wild orangutan offered its hand to a man wading through snake-infested waters. The brief interaction was captured by an amateur photographer, Anil Prabharkar, as he was on a safari with his friends through a conservational forest in the Indonesian land of Borneo last month. The forest, which is maintained by Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, BOS, is a sanctuary for the critically endangered apes who might need refuge in the face of injuries, poaching threats, or habitat loss. Since venomous snakes are the orangutan's only real predator in the forest, it's quite likely that this particular ape knew the consequences of approaching the muddy waters. The man in the photo was a conservancy guard who was busy clearing off the snakes for Prabhakar and his friends when the orangutan offered him his hand. Prabhakar later said, "It was the orangutan saying, 'May I help you?'" Due to the unpredictability of wild orangutans, the warden ended up circling around to a different point at the bank and climbing out of the water on his own, but not before Prabhakar snapped a photo of the interaction. I just had to grab that moment. It was really emotional. I highly recommend you look up the picture. It is very sweet to see the orangutan extending his hand and looking out for this conservancy professional. Just seeing animals trying to help out humans, I think, is just so sweet and so showing, that we are related. Of course we're related. And being able to see working together like that, I really loved. I thought it was very, very sweet. In another animal story that I found that I thought you guys would like, an enthusiastic backyard bird watcher named Stuart Dahlquist spent years leaving out food for a family of crows. But he never expected to be given anything in return for the snacks, as, of course, he was feeding crows. You really don't expect feeding birds for them to feed you back. Many people feed birds as a hobby. There's often that stereotype of seeing retirees in a park feeding ducks. However, that's why he was all the more shocked when he was surprised with a gift from the Corvids back in March. The 56-year-old Seattle homeowner first became acquainted with the bird family after he rescued 2 chicks that had fallen out of their nest in his front yard 5 years ago. So these birds have been in his life for quite a while. Dahlquist told the Dodo that he had always delighted in listening to the baby birds chirp to their parents during feeding time. So when he went outside, he found the tiny crows on the ground. He knew that he had to help. Despite the squawks of alarm from the adults, Dahlquist managed to scoop up the chicks and put them back into the nest. He even left out food and water at the base of the tree in case they fell for a second time. He really thought of everything. And then he began regularly throwing bird food into his front yard, and the crows apparently took notice. One day, when Dahlquist was preparing for his daily feeding ritual, he was surprised to find a fir sprig that had been decorated with a soda can tab. Not only that, it was left in the exact spot where he fed the crows. I noticed straight away because I'm kind of sensitive about trash going where it belongs. Obviously, somebody that feeds birds like this would be a bit of an environmentalist. I'm not surprised by this at all. But the pull tab being threaded onto a sprig fir wasn't normal, and I hung on to it. The next day, he was offered a second soda tab decorated branch courtesy of the crows. And he says he was absolutely stunned by the discovery. This isn't only generous, it's creative, it's art, Dahlquist wrote on social media. My mind is blown. Since his Twitter photo of his greenery gifts were shared several thousand times, Jennifer Campbell-Smith, a behavioral ecologist who earned her PhD studying crows specifically at the Binghamton University, told the Audubon Society, "I'm very skeptical of random internet sources, but knowing these birds and how intelligent they are, I wouldn't be shocked." So it's not quite a confirmation from her, but I tend to believe these sort of things. It's still an amazing example of the way the crows are really watching us. They're mindful of us, and in their own way are data mining for the best way to manipulate us, she added. Well, I don't like to think of them manipulative, but I do really like this story of giving back, trying to return the favor, as it were, when they don't have a lot to give us. I really liked that. So regardless of the corvid's intent, Dahlquist says he's maintained a close relationship with the bird family since the incident. Additionally, he told Audubon that he planned to get a tattoo of the gift as a reminder of his sweet interspecies friendship. He says they'll follow along when I take my walks, landing on the wires along the way. The adult male is very amiable and will fly sometimes within a few feet, swooping by to say, "Here I am." I just loved this. I thought it was so sweet. And the previous story as well about the orangutan. I like the idea of animals, feeling that they're not that separate from us and feeling like we're all in this thing together. We're all on this planet Earth together, and we're going to, do our best to be part of each other, and to help each other out and extend a hand, quite literally, in the case of the orangutan. So just being generous to one another, being kind to one another, giving back when someone has been really generous with you, even in a way that they didn't quite expect, I suppose. So, that's it for our animal stories. When we come back, we do quite a bit of this. I'm going to talk about some advancements in medical research and science and scientific research that have been really helping us out. So we're going to do that when we return.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about our friends from the animal kingdom helping us out and returning the favor in ways that we wouldn't quite expect. And now, the world's first AI system develops a new drug, cutting R&D costs by 80%, moving it to trials for OCD patients in 1/5 the time as normal. There's a lot of conversation about artificial intelligence over the last decade as the controversial science fiction turned non-fiction technology begins to trickle its ways into various economic sectors. But now, for the first time in history, an AI system created by a company called Exentia has invented a drug molecule that's entering phase 1 in human trials. The molecule has been found to treat obsessive-compulsive disorder, but the noteworthy news is that the normal 5-year period for synthesizing a drug and preparing the best version of the trial was cut down to just 12 months because it was placed into the brain of an intelligent machine. Exentia Chief Executive Professor Andrew Hopkins described the breakthrough as a key milestone in drug discovery. We've seen AI for diagnosing patients and for analyzing patient data and scans, but the direct use of AI and the creation of a new machine, says Hopkins, there are billions of decisions that need to find the right molecules, and it has a huge decision to precisely engineer the drug. But the beauty of the algorithm is that they're agnostic. They can be applied to any disease. Hopkins went on to predict that by the end of the year, all drug molecules could be discovered or created by artificially intelligent systems. This could significantly bring down the cost of research and development for pharmaceutical companies, since the process of discovery, synthesizing, and trialing a drug in most countries is so expensive. The enormous costs place enormous risks on a new drug endeavor, especially in the 5 years of groundwork that need to be done by well-educated and well-paid employees. The attempts to bring an experimental drug to market fail after phases 1, 2, or even 3 in clinical trials. The development cost is even greater. AI reduced costs of labor and R&D in pharmaceuticals by 80%. The front-loaded savings mean that more drugs and more diseases can be synthesized and moved into trial. This would be especially valuable in patients with diseases that are uncommon, because smaller market might be one that pharmaceutical companies would otherwise have to avoid. So that is an incredibly huge feat for people suffering from OCD to have this drug isolated and into its stages so quickly and readily available for them. In other medical advancement news, it is never too late, according to this new study that finds that lungs magically repair themselves after quitting smoking, no matter what age. The exciting new study says that protective cells in the lungs of ex-smokers could explain why quitting smoking dramatically reduces the risk of developing lung cancer. Cancer research funded researchers from the Wellcome Sanger Institute in UCL have discovered that compared to current smokers, people who have stopped smoking had much more genetically healthy lung cells, which have a much lower risk of developing cancer. Study shows that quitting smoking could do much more than just stopping further damage to the lungs. Researchers believe that it could allow new healthy cells to actively replenish the lining of our airways. The shift in proportion of healthy to damaged cells could help protect against cancer. The results highlight the benefits of stopping smoking completely at any age. People who have smoked heavily for 30 or 40 years might often say to me that it's too late to quit smoking. Damage is already done. What's so exciting about our study is that it shows that it's never too late to quit. Some people in the study have smoked more than 15,000 packs of cigarettes over their life, but with a few years of quitting, many of the cell linings in their airways show no evidence of damage from tobacco. He said that the research team were totally unprepared over the seemingly magical occurrence of the airway regeneration. Lung cancer is a very common cause of cancer death, accounting for 21% of all cancer deaths. Smoking tobacco damages DNA and hugely increases the risk of lung cancer, with around 72% of the 47,000 annual lung cancer cases caused by smoking. It's estimated that around 229,000 cases of lung cancer will be diagnosed in the U.S. in 2020. Damage to the DNA and cells lining in the lungs creates genetic errors, and some of these are driver mutations, which are changes that give cell growth advantage. Eventually, an accumulation of these driver mutations can let cells divide uncontrollably and become cancerous. However, when someone stops smoking, they avoid most of the subsequent risk of lung cancer. So they sequenced DNA of 632 individual cells from these biopsies, and looking at the pattern of genetic changes in non-cancerous lung cells, researchers found that despite not being cancerous, more than 9 out of 10 lung cells in current smokers had up to 10,000 extra genetic mutations compared with non-smokers. These mutations caused directly by the chemicals in tobacco smoke. Unexpectedly, people who had stopped smoking, there was a sizable group of cells in the lining in the airways that had escaped genetic damage from their past smoking. These cells were on par with the people who had never smoked. And the researchers found that ex-smokers had 4 times more of these healthy cells than people who still smoked, representing 40% of the total lung cells in ex-smokers. While the study showed that these healthy lungs could start to repair the lining in the airways, ex-smokers can help protect them against lung cancer. Smoking also causes damage deeper in the lung that can lead to emphysema, chronic lung disease. That damage is not reversible even after stopping smoking. So they don't recommend that you take up smoking in light of this recent discovery. However, it does look like the cancerous effects can actually be reversed. So if you're thinking that it might be too late to quit smoking, that is absolutely not true. Listen to these numbers and listen to Dr. Rachel Orrit, who says it's a really motivating idea that people who stop smoking might reap benefits twice over by preventing more tobacco-related damage to cells, by giving their lungs a chance to balance out some of the existing damage with healthier cells. What's needed now are larger studies that look at cell changes with the same people over time to confirm these findings. Results add to existing evidence that if you smoke, stopping is completely the best thing that you can do for your health. It's not always easy to kick the habit, but getting support from a free local stop smoking service, and it roughly triples the chance of success compared to going it alone. You can read more on that if you're interested. But it is positive and good to know that there is a chance of stopping and reversing, not even just stopping, reversing the damage to your lungs by smoking. When we return, fish stocks also recovering, and we're going to talk about another form of recovery when we come back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. So when you left, we were talking about the repairing of damage to the lungs caused by smoking. And now we are going to talk about another form of recovery. It turns out that scientists have found that half of the world's fish stocks are recovered, or at least increasing, in oceans that used to be overfished not too long ago. You may have cheered some of the many GNN reports of critically endangered species rebounding after human intervention, like declining numbers of humpback whales, green sea turtles, and bald eagles entirely reversed by conservation heroes. Another area of environmental degradation that now is turning around in the right direction is the surprising recovery of fish stocks. In the most comprehensive review of fisheries management and fishing management per region basis to date, an international team of researchers concluded that fish stocks are mostly increasing in these world waters. In a paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the research team gathered data from 50% of the world's fish stocks, which include a harvest rate, recovery rate, fishing pressure, and population numbers, as well as 50% of the world's fisheries, including management strategies, fluctuations, and predictions in maximum sustainable yield. The conclusion provided in their paper is striking. The good news is that, maybe surprising to most, where commercial fishing is managed, stocks are growing. This article compiles estimates of the statues of fish stocks from available scientific assessments, comprising roughly half of the world's fish catch, the author began, and shows that on average fish stocks are increasing where they are assessed. Where fisheries are intensively managed, the stocks are above target levels or rebuilding. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime, it says. While the last major data set accumulated for fish stocks only included North America, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and Europe, the researchers added the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, Northwest Africa, South America, Russia, and Japan. Fish stocks declined on average globally until 1996, when the trend began to halt. In 2005, it started to go the other way. And then in 2016, the biomass of animals was higher, and the maximum sustainable yield maker and fishing pressure was lower than the unsustainable maximum yield marker averaged across all measured fish stocks worldwide. Paper details that 19% of fish stocks are still depleted, are poised to recover based on the fishery management along the basic principles laid out. Scientifically managed and assessed fish stocks in many places are increasing or already above the levels that will provide sustainable long-term catch, concludes the paper. Another little scientific discovery of something that was once lost that I thought you guys would enjoy. Dozens of creatures that were thought to be extinct were found alive in a lost city in the jungle. I can already see the Pixar film forming. SWAT team of scientists traveled to the lost city, buried deep within the jungles of Honduras. They were stunned by the sheer amount of biodiversity that they found. Back in 2017, researchers from Conservation International conducted a 3-week research expedition following the discovery of ancient ruins site deep within the mosquito rainforest known as the lost city of Monkey God, or the White City. Since the rainforest remains one of the most unexplored areas of Central America, the team hoped to shine a light on the ecological state of the region. The organization finally published a full report on their findings this week, and it details how the ancient settlement is encompassed by a pristine, thriving ecosystem teeming with rare and unique species, including new species and species once thought to be extinct. In total, the team documented 198 species of birds, 94 of butterflies, 40 of small mammals, 56 of amphibians and reptiles, 30 of large mammals such as pumas, ocelots, and jaguars, and a variety of plants, fish, rodents, and insects. Some of the more notable finds included a tiger beetle, which had only ever been recorded in Nicaragua, was believed to be extinct, and the false tree coral snake, which has not been reported in Honduras since 1965. Our team of scientists were shocked at the discovery of the tremendously rich biodiversity, including many rare and threatened species, said Trond Larsen, a director of the Conservation's International Rapid Assessment Program. The White City is one of the few areas remaining in Central America where the ecological and evolutionary processes remain intact. Overall, our findings demonstrate that the area of global environmental as well as archaeological significance, Larsen continued. Armed with this knowledge, stakeholders can now begin to design and implement conservation strategies to protect this critical ecosystem. Conservation International now hopes that their findings will help to implement additional conservation measures that will help to protect the region from deforestation. So just like it's not too late to repair your lungs, guys, it's not too late to repair the fishing in our oceans, the overfishing, the deforestation, and the depletion of various species that we have once thought have been dwindling in numbers or extinct, or at least on the verge of extinction. It's never too late to turn these things around and to make it better and to fix it. Just like, the problem with global warming and things like that, we're going to be able to fix it if we really work together, if we stop doing the things that we were doing before, if we listen to these rules, if we listen to the scientists and how to reverse these things, we can do it. So let's not be defeatist. There's positivity. When we return from the break, we're going to be talking about a new app that will help aid people suffering from extreme loneliness. It's a new project to text people that just needs a little bit of comfort and social companionship when we return from the break.
Pets bring such joy to our lives, and the GSMC Pets podcast is here to share in that joy. We'll tell stories of pets finding their forever homes, acting in unexpected ways, being helpful, or just being silly. Whether you love dogs, cats, llamas, reptiles, fish, or you've never met an animal you didn't like, the GSMC Pets podcast is for you.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about the great things happening in various forests, ensuring the survival of things that we once thought were depleting. And now you can send compassionate texts to random strangers and get them in return, thanks to a new project. Although people are using their phones more than ever, studies say that people across all age groups, particularly millennials, are lonelier than ever. That's why this new texting platform is aimed to spreading kindness and connection all over the world by allowing people to send and receive compassionate texts from strangers. Text for Humanity is the world's first texting switchboard, launched by cloud communications company Cinch in partnership with Mental Health America, in means of fighting social isolation from people's cell phones. Today, nothing is as personal and emotional as to use our phones. But although we use them 24/7 to communicate with one another, we seem to feel lonelier than ever, and not happier. Cinch CMO Jonathan Bean told the Good News Network, "At Cinch, we believe mobile communication is the solution, not the problem. So what if people could start to get unconditional love from the phones that we love unconditionally? We made the first texting switchboard where you can send a text that you would love to get to a stranger, and in turn, you receive a text that someone in the world right now needs to hear. Because we're more open and honest with strangers, these words have the potential to be relevant, personal, and powerful. After all, we are human. All the users have to do is text the word join to the corresponding Text for Humanity phone number of their country. After that, users will simply be asked for their first name and the country of origin before they're ready to write kind messages, up to 160 characters long. Each text is then sent to another random user somewhere in the world, and in return, the user receives a sweet text from another stranger. Users can send and receive up to 5 texts every day. Since the service launched in 23 different countries last month, more than 7,000 kind texts have already been exchanged. Mental Health America CEO and President Paul Gianfrido said, "We know there's a lot of negativity online these days. And by taking a minute to deliver a simple positive message to someone that might need it, each of us can help brighten up someone's day and lift overall mental well-being." So that's a lovely new app that is possible. So if you wanted to learn more about that app, you can look it up. And if you want to find the number of your country, if you're listening to this outside of the United States, just look up Text for Humanity. In another smartphone app story of helping to alleviate mental health issues, this one comes from a 16-year-old girl who's invented something. Many of us know the feeling of sitting alone in a cafeteria during school lunchtime. I know I do. And this includes 16-year-old Natalie Hampton. When she first started high school, the teen was constantly ostracized and rejected when she was trying to find a place to sit during the lunch period. By the time she made friends and settled in at her school, Sherman Oaks, California, she couldn't help but think about all the other kids suffering in silence, the same way that she had. That's why she created Sit With Us, an innovative app that allows children to coordinate safe places to eat and to make new friends. Since the planning takes place in a privatized chat channel rather than in the public, teens don't have to worry about possibly being embarrassed during their search for belonging. Kids can host lunches as ambassadors for Sit With Us Club and get started that way. Because the way it was at my school, I tried many, many times to reach out to someone, but I was rejected many times. And there's nothing more isolating, than putting yourself out there time and time again and getting rejected. This happens especially in the workforce, especially in areas like the one that I'm in, where where there isn't really a lot of work, and you're constantly sort of applying for things and getting rejection after rejection after rejection. It's not good for your mental health to receive that much rejection when you're constantly putting everything that you have on the line. So, this was a really beautiful story for me to read, to see someone taking that rejection and harnessing it into a positive outcome instead, and seeing, okay, so this is happening to me. That means it's probably not just me. It's happening to, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of other people. So if it's happening like this consistently, maybe I should create something that will aid this and stop the suffering of others. Natalie says, if you feel like you're labeling yourself as an outcast when you ask to join a table with someone that you don't know. This way it's private, through the app, of course, through the phone, and no one else has to know. And you're not going to be rejected once you get to the table. So this is a way of feeling included when you're a little bit nervous to ask to be included. There's nothing more vulnerable than asking for inclusion. So I love that Natalie did this. Since the app was launched on September 9th, Natalie has received an outpouring of gratitude and positive feedback for her app. It's also free to download at the Apple Store. So if you are experiencing this loneliness, please, please, please download the app. You don't have to suffer. Please reach out and ask for help. What a sweet, lovely girl to do this, to aid her classmates and peers, to make them feel as if they are able to reach out for help. When we come back, we're going into our final segment, the good news in history in today's date, when we return.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. when we left off, we were talking about some technological advancements to help with loneliness. I do hope that if you're feeling lonely and left out, if you're in school, you look into those apps. And if you're not, or if you still are in school, look into the texting app if you want to feel included in these things. For our final segment, I wanted to talk about the good news in history on today's date. I'm recording this on the 10th of February, so that will be the one that I'm covering. The Oscars were last night, and today is the birthday of actress and producer Laura Dern, so happy birthday. She turns 53 today, celebrating earning her Academy Award yesterday for her performance as a divorce lawyer in Marriage Story. You should definitely see this if you haven't. It was absolutely incredible. And she also stars in the Oscar-nominated film Little Women. Also phenomenal. What a phenomenal performance. She had a great year, Laura Dern. So her parents are Bruce Dern and Diane Ladd. Laura canceled her college classes so that she could act in the David Lynch film Blue Velvet, which propelled her career, so it was a good choice. She then received an Oscar nomination for her portrayal in Rambling Rose, in an international stardom following her role in Spielberg's blockbuster Jurassic Park. And achieved a Golden Globe for her role in Recount, playing Catherine Harris, and an Academy Award nomination for Wild, and an Emmy nomination for Big Little Lies. She's had an incredible career. She was also featured last Saturday on CBS as an Oscar nominee. And she just seems delightful, and I loved her speech thanking her parents and calling them her heroes. Just a lovely thing to do. Some more good news. On today's date, the first singing telegram offered by Postal Telegram Company in 1933. On today's date, the first singing telegram. Roy Lichtenstein's first solo exhibition opened, which featured his first employment of Ben-Day dots, speech balloons, and comic imagery sourcing, was on 1962, February 10th. Carole King released her second studio album, Tapestry, one of the best-selling albums of all time, 25 million sold worldwide, with the number one hit single, It's Too Late. I Feel the Earth Move, and a cover photograph taken at her Laurel Canyon home, holding a tapestry that she stitched herself and her cat, Telemachus, in 1971. On today's date, Carole King. If you haven't seen the musical Beautiful, you absolutely should. It was fantastic. The Clash started recording their debut album at CBS Studios in London for the first of 3 weekend sessions that would complete a production for just £4,000 in 1977. Iraq agreed to allow U2 surveillance fights over its territory, meeting a key demand by the UN inspectors searching for banned weapons in 2003. And Senator Barack Obama kicked off his presidential campaign with a speech at the State House in Springfield, Illinois, in 2007 on today's date. It feels kind of late now that we've been following the Democratic primaries, hasn't it? On the date in 1942, first gold record, simply sprayed with gold lacquered, was presented to none other than Glenn Miller by RCA to celebrate the sale of 1.2 million copies of Chattanooga Choo Choo, a song that I'm sure you all know well. And if not, I definitely encourage you to go listen to it. You absolutely should know what it is. It's an iconic song. It should be one of the most famous songs of all time. So definitely, if you don't know it, go and listen to it right now. What's your excuse? The publicity stunt was later adopted by the Recording Industry Association of America, which began presenting actual gold records and, of course, trademarked the name. So that was in 1942 on February the 10th. And finally, on February the 10th in 1949, Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman opened on Broadway in the Morosco Theater. The story featured an insecure and mentally unstable salesman named Willie Loman, and it won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama and a Tony Award for Best Play. It's widely considered to be one of the greatest plays of the 20th century. The actors nominated for Tonys while playing Loman in 4 Broadway revivals include Philip Seymour Hoffman, George C. Scott, Brian Dennehy, and Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman playing Willie Loman with John Malkovich as his son Biff, who I have actually played before. That was a role I played, was Biff, son from Death of a Salesman. I know, controversial, woman playing Biff. However, I really connected to it, so there you go. So that's all of our stories from our today's date. So there's a lot going on today's date, politically, culturally, and of course, birthdays for Laura Dern. Congratulations again for that very well-deserved Oscar. She really, really did a beautiful, beautiful job there. And congratulations to Parasite. Wasn't that incredible? Did you guys love Parasite? I know I did. I absolutely loved that. So good, so good, so good. Yeah, so that's it. That's it for us today. So thank you. Thank you for listening again to the GSMC, America Still Beautiful podcast, which is brought to you, of course, by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and, write us a nice review if you can. Just a couple of words down below and rate the episode. That really helps us. So it really helps boost us up in the rankings. And also, if you could please follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Thank you so much, and have yourselves a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.